Cycling for me has never been about the bikes. They've only ever been the prerequisite tool. I do not see just a bike race, I see riders on heroic journeys and warriors doing battle. At one point, cycling was the most popular sport in Europe because newspapers told magnificent tales about epic races and crafted the great champions into legends. But with the advent of television, cycling lost some of its mystique, and that golden age of journalism and narration has perished. So now let us try to return some romance to the beautiful sport. Let us praise and give glory to phenomenal performances to be remembered for decades to come. Let us dwell on the moments that inspire and move us. Let us chronicle the rise and fall of heroes. Let us chart these life-changing journeys, these cycling odysseys. All right, welcome back to another episode of Cycling Odysseys. I'm your host, Patrick Santino. We're getting back to it. We're going to do a large chunk of the rewind stages of the tour because those are what I have ready to go. So, if you need more of a recap about the whole show, how this works, and what I'm doing here, please check out the introduction episodes at the beginning of the feed of this. Stage 1 should just do it well. And anyways, we're getting back to the tour rewind because it was the greatest tour of my lifetime. If you're wondering, I was not born before 1989, or else from all accounts, that one, and from what I know, that one probably is still better than 2020. But anyways, here we are. This is stage 7. This was on the first Friday of the tour. I remember I was working from home that day, and I could have the tour on in the background as I worked that morning. And luckily I did keep tabs to, as I turned it on, as soon as I woke up, I turned it on, and then it's like, oh, today they're coming to play. We know what's showing up on this seemingly flat stage. We know what's happening today. And thankfully, I watched it all. I saw all the action. It was great. I loved it. So excellent. You could probably guess what's coming. Fair warning too. This is where my stages, my recap, whatever it is, starts to going off the rails isn't the right word, but this maybe coming into its own, but maybe even going beyond coming into its own. Somewhere in between off the rails and coming into its own. This is where it's like, okay, this is what I wrote, and yeah, that's pretty goofy. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but I got the idea and I ran with it. It was pretty awesome. Let's just jump into it and you'll see what I'm talking about. Monsieur Green Jersey. Tour de France 2020, Stage 7, Milieu to Lavar, 168 kilometers. Crosswind's ravaged sprint field as Van Aert wins reduced bunch sprint. Pogacar, Landa, and other minor GC hopefuls lose minute 20. He woke up this morning as fresh as possible after 6 days of racing on the Tour de France. Perhaps he did some stretching, had breakfast, and looked at the road book. He probably discussed with his sports directors. Perhaps they had a team meeting before they left the hotel. Or perhaps it was on the bus ride over to the stage start, or upon arrival at the start village. Anyways, surely the plan was formed, and it was time to prepare. A proper warm-up would be needed today. Luckily, he was mentally sharp and confident. Dear readers, I do not yet know what was said or thought this day, but allow me to take some liberties in this piece. Most likely, I will not be as eloquently spoken as him, but allow me to try my best to replay his possible thoughts and sayings from this day. Surely, as he put on his drab, standard, team-issued uniform, such things as these must have been running through his mind. It is stage 7 of the Tour de France, and I am not yet in my proper jersey. I get paid too many euros to not win this competition. Now they are saying I am off my best. I am getting older. Some even call me Tubby. They say I look like a shadow of my former self. And sure, perhaps my lockdown did not go particularly well. As I famously announced, I am not a virtual cyclist. Turbo training is not my strong suit. I am a real cyclist. I need the wind in my ears. I need to corner the bike at exhilarating speeds. I need the flowing descents and to see the kilometers pass beneath my wheels. I need to have the bike rock back and forth as I sprint out of the saddle. I have not raced enough, and even in this shortened season, I have more objectives. My top form will come. Even Paris is still far away. But today, Oh, I will not let this day pass without taking my shot, without playing my hand. Yes, today I will try something. I shall remind them that I am still Peter Sagan of Bora Hansgrohe. I am Monsieur Green Jersey, and today I shall take back what is mine. The flag dropped. The stage was begun, heading straight into the Category 3 climb of the Côte de les Icônes. Benoît Cosnefroy of AG2R, wearing the polka dot jersey of the King of the Mountains, attacked immediately to nab the first points available for the day. The land was exposed. It was harsh terrain for beautiful France. There was wind. In such conditions, cyclists are instinctively on their toes, on edge. Why, the climbers all look like animals of prey who know the predator lurks. Meanwhile, other riders, particularly the battle-hardened veterans of the Northern Classics, lick their lips. The wind was swirling. The direction seemed right. Peter Sagan, now a veteran of the peloton and a leader of men, studied the winds like a legendary mariner or a decorated admiral out at sea. Gentlemen, Sagan may have said to his Bora teammates, now is the time. Let us begin the endeavor. Forward! To the front of the peloton! The entire Bora team massed to the front of the peloton as the climbing was beginning. They set a ferocious pace. The peloton was completely strung out, the wounded and the weaker climbers at the very back. The Bora team drilled it so hard, why they caught Cosnefroy at the top of the climb, forcing the polka dots to sprint for his mountain points. There were many wounded already, mostly still from Thor's devastation on stage 1. But who are the weaker climbers? Yes, dear readers, you know, the sprinters. One by one, they dropped out the back of the peloton. Nizzolo of NTT in his European champion's jersey was gone. Pedersen of Trek Segafredo in the Rainbows, champion of the world, was out the back. Sprightly Caleb Ewan of Lado Sudal, the pocket rocket of Stage 3 fame, could not handle the pace. Other big-framed Classics riders were with them. Then went Kees Bol of Sunweb, who was second only to Wout van Aert of Jumbo-Visma on Stage 5. Down went Alexander Kristoff of UAE, Thor's favorite son, and the veteran Andre Greipel of Israel's Startup Nation was out the back too. Keep going, good lads, Sagan possibly said to the Bora infantrymen on the front. We have them on the ropes. To the sword! Put them all to the sword! Why, these organizers and these sprinters, they think pure speed should be able to win them the points competition. No! To win the green jersey, you must be a complete rider. You must be able to climb and descend as well as sprint. Take it from me, I am Monsieur Green Jersey, 7 times the winner of the points competition. 7 times I have worn green on the Champs-Élysées. To hear the names of such fast men going out the back was good news to the Bora team. But where was the certain quick man who they were most concerned about? Sam Bennett of Deceuninck Quickstep, the champion of Ireland, wore not the Irish jersey today because he was the man leading the points competition. He was the man wearing the green jersey. Surely the most important in Sagan's crosshairs today. Thus the Bora troops were still on the front, charging down the road like cavalry. For them, the battle was just beginning. Groups off the back were forming. And look at that! They rode in echelons. Surely the wind was blowing across from the left. To the right-hand side of someone was where the protection from the wind was now. Riding directly behind someone did not provide the usual draft. It would only allow the crosswind to flow between their wheels and rip open the gap between them. Already strung out and gassed on the climb, many of the sprinters and weak climbers were now in double trouble as they clamored to make new friends who were willing to work together. From the helicopter, the groups behind rode across the road with large gaps in between. On the straight vertical road, the groups looked like almost horizontal rungs on a ladder in parallel formation, an echelon, as the French would say. Still, the GC men and their top lieutenants massed in a large front group behind Bora, but Sam Bennett was not there any longer. He was one group behind, closing back in to rejoin the Bora peloton. Only 50 more meters to close now. Bennett had avoided the danger. We looked at him as he gave a thumbs up to the camera. Only 10 meters now, and Bennett's group would be safely returned. But wait! They rode into the exposed lands again. And the crosswinds returned. No! A gap formed again! In an instant! It was 50 meters. A whole 100 meters again! My, oh my, Sam Bennett, Oliver Nassen of AG2R, Luke Rowe of Ineos Grenadiers, Daryl Impey of Mitchelton Scott, and you others caught out. You should have known better to make sure the job was finished off properly before easing up. Back into the echelon formation they all went. The chase was restarted. But of course, Bora continued to pile on the pressure, while Bennett's quick-step teammates near him scrambled to the front of the group and tried to claw back the gap. But to no avail. The gap began to balloon out. For Bennett and his men, this would be a tough day. For the rest of the sprinters behind, even tougher. Oh, Sam, you gave a thumbs up too early. And Sagan was loving the moment. Come on, lads. Now we've got him. Continue. This is great work. Forward. Let us finish him now. To the sword. Perhaps he looked back and gave a thought to Bennett behind. It is nothing personal, Mr. Bennett, but you are in my jersey, and I would very much like it back. Goodbye now. And with that, like a competent and accomplished Bond villain, Sagan and his Bora team literally left Bennett's group in the dust. Yes, dear readers, at one point, the combination of wind and the helicopter started a dust bowl behind the lead group that Bennett's group had to ride through. The gaps grew exponentially. With 128 kilometers to go, Sagan's peloton, 100 men strong, with Bora doing 100% of the work, led Bennett's chasing group of 30 riders by 1:05. A third group of the remaining 40 men in the race, containing all the wounded and other big sprinters, were already 2 minutes and 37 seconds back. This, dear readers, is a crosswind stage. Who thought such devastation could be wrecked on the flat? At 120 kilometers to go, Bennett's group was now at 1 minute and 44 seconds down. The last group, 3:26 behind. Think how it must feel to be in that third group, tired or wounded, perhaps now fighting to make the time cut with 3/4 of the stage still to ride. It must be demoralizing. How could one motivate oneself to fight on? All the strongest men of the day were further up front, extending their lead. One group ahead, Sam Bennett must have been kicking himself, and his teammates, Casper Asgreen and Bob Jungels, both of DeConing Quickstep, were turning themselves inside out on the front with little hope of catching the Bora-led peloton up ahead. And they had little assistance. In a group of 30, these two did the lion's share of the work, while up front, the Bora gents swapped turns on the front with 5 or 6 strong men. Every second they gained fueled them more to press on even harder. Perhaps Sagan thought to himself, now this is bike racing. This is where I belong. Say not the word Zwift in my presence. The lockdowns were long and boring. It did not suit me well. Here is where I feel most alive. And now my top rivals are distanced, leaving me 2 opportunities to score ample points to take a commanding lead in green. At that point, the peloton began to approach the intermediate sprint. 20 points in the green jersey points competition would be available for the man who crossed the line first, 17 points for second, 15 points for third, and so on, down to 1 point for 15th. This is why Bora had sprung the attack so early in the stage, to allow Sagan the opportunity to take maximum points, while other sprinters, especially Bennett, would take none. Though Bora had done well in losing all of the biggest sprinters, there was still competition here for Sagan. Wout van Aert, already a sprint stage winner, was still in the group. Matteo Trentin of CCC, a notable fast man in a similar mold to Sagan, was still here. Little Brian Cocard of B&B Hotels Vital Concept was surely one to watch, as well as Jasper Stuyven of Trek Segafredo. Van Aert, with such loyal team duties to his GC leaders, had no interest in the intermediate sprint, but the others would not let Sagan walk to victory. They all formed up with whatever lead-out men they had for the sprint. The pace quickened. Trentin was interested in this. So was Cocard. Trentin and Sagan came out of the saddle, neck and neck. They sprinted for the line. It was close, almost a photo, but Trentin had it, though his straight line had been a little questionable. Sagan second, Cocard behind him in third. We could see Sagan speak with Trentin after they crossed the line. What did he say? Perhaps he said, "All right, Mr. Trentin, I don't know about your line on that sprint, but let us now talk business. My lads have been working on the front like the Huskies of Alaska, dragging a large sled of supplies. You have men in these ranks as well. Send them to the front to assist us so that we might ensure our escape and stay away to the line. Then it will be down to you and I, Cocard behind, and perhaps the talented Van Aert to sprint for stage honors. Let us all contribute to the effort." Team CCC did not take the deal, so Bora continued to press on alone onto the long but shallow climb. 108 kilometers to go, Bennett's group was 2 minutes and 10 seconds back. The third group, 4 minutes and 49 seconds back. And the gap continued to grow. With 96 kilometers to go, Bennett's group was down to 3:37, and the third group was even worse at 6:26 back. The camera showed Bennett. He looked like death. He still rode on, but the fire was gone from him and his teammates and the whole rest of the group. The only thing left to do was suffer for another 100 kilometers. What a punishment for these men behind. All this Bora destruction caused because someone dared to challenge Sagan for green. But that is cycling. Bennett's group and the sprinters behind would not see the leaders again today, and no points would be available to Bennett to defend his lead. Already, after the intermediate sprint, Sagan was provisionally back in green. Sagan, 134 points overall for the Tour. Bennett, only 129. With Caleb Ewan long gone and not to return, his teammate Thomas de Gendt of Lotto Soudal attempted a solo attack over the top of the long climb. Thomas Degent, the finest breakaway specialist in the peloton, is always one to watch. Surely everyone remembers his electrifying win into Saint-Etienne last year. Cocard's B&B team then committed 2 riders to help the Bora men on the front. Together, the teams kept Degent on a short leash. His lead was never more than a minute. With 50 points available at the finish to the stage winner, this would be a golden opportunity for Sagan to consolidate his lead over all the sprinters that would not catch their group. No breakaway artist would get away today. Sagan wanted the full 50 points, and if he could not win, he wanted to be as close as possible. 40, even 30 points would still give him a commanding lead. Perhaps here Sagan thought to himself, "What do you have to say now, journalists and experts? Here I am, Peter Sagan. I have struck back. Already I will be in green at the end of the day, and here at the finish I will lengthen such a lead even more, for I am Monsieur Green Jersey." And so the conditions looked set for the final run into the finish, so long as Degent was kept in check. But with 40 kilometers to go, the peloton was stirring. Suddenly, the Ineos Grenadiers took command on the front. Dylan van Baarle, Mikhail Kwiatkowski, Richard Carapaz, and Egan Bernal could have been confused with a squadron of jet fighters as they hawked down the roads at the speed of sound. The astute Julian Alaphilippe of Deceuninck Quickstep trailed right behind them. Yes, Ineos, with their data and their most detailed preparation, knew the time was right. In an instant, Degent was caught. The peloton was strung out single file, and bingo! The elastic snapped. The crosswinds ripped the peloton apart. Echelons formed. Van Baarle, the rider that strung out the field and ripped it apart, pulled off the front. Tank empty, job done. Kwiato took his place on the front. What did Bora and Sagan think of this? Perhaps Sagan thought to himself, "Ah yes, Ineos, I approve. Drive on. Long have I raced you all. In fact, with all the Jersey podiums over the years, I know some of your guys quite well. Froomey, G, young Egan. Really, it is not my concern, but perhaps you all are under the same microscope as I am. They say you are off your game and out of sorts. Your dominance is being questioned. Let us answer the critics together. Continue. Shell out your GC rivals and drop also my other sprinting threats." Richie Porte of Trek Segafredo missed the split. Dan Martin of Israel Startup Nation was caught out as well. And then finally, inevitably, 2 of the big fish GC riders were caught out too. Tadej Pogačar of UAE, lying 3rd overall and wearing the white jersey of Best Young Rider, with Mikel Landa of Bahrain McLaren, were split from the main GC favorites. Greg Van Avermaet of CCC, Esteban Chavez of Mitchelton Scott, and some Movistar riders were caught back with them. The other GC teams pounced to take full advantage. Surely they must twist the knife on Pogačar and Landa when they can, for both climb like angels in the mountains. In the front group, Adam Yates of Mitchelton Scott looked composed in yellow. Alaphilippe was in his element. Bernal looked good. Already the front group had 23 seconds on Pogačar's group behind. For Sagan, Trentin was eliminated. He had missed the split, but Van Aert and Cocard and Stuyven were still in there. Then Carapaz had a puncture. Unfortunate for Ineos. He was their second man to Bernal. But with 16 kilometers to go, Pogačar and Landa's group was now down 55 seconds, and other teams piled on to grow this gap. To the front came Jumbo-Visma, Astana, and Groupama FDJ, all at full strength. An Ineos teammate dropped back to assist Carapaz, but to no avail. They fell back into the Pogačar group, now 120 down, with only 10 kilometers remaining on the day. Stefan Kuhn drove the pace on the front for Groupama FDJ, making sure to set a pace that no one could launch an attack from. Thus, this remaining group came into the final straightaway together for the sprint. "All right, Peter," perhaps he thought to himself as they came into the final kilometer. "Here we go for another sprint. The pace is high, but most of the lead-out men are gone. There, yes, stay on Van Aert's wheel. Surely he is the man on top form, the one I must follow and come around for victory." Yes, Sagan was in great position, but as Michael Gogol of NTT swung off left for his sprinter Edvald Boasson-Hagen of NTT to launch his final sprint, Van Aert accelerated from the right, while Sagan peeled left and was slowed by Gogol sinking through the ranks. Sagan swung far left, perhaps nudging Hofstadter of Israel Startup Nation, and instead of launching his final sprint, he looked down and spun out. His chain had dropped. Alas, Sagan would not finish off the day for his Bora teammates. Van Aert, from the far right, powered to the stage win over Boasson-Hagen and Cocard. Sagan, with the mechanical problems, managed only 13th. So much for consolidating the points lead. 13th only earned him 4 points. Behind, the Pogačar group finished 120 down, and many minutes later, Bennett's larger group eventually crossed the line. But all that mattered little to Sagan. Dear readers, I will stop musing on what Sagan's thoughts might have been, for surely he was upset, and surely the language would here become PG-13 or worse. Yes, this was confirmed by his international TV interview when he summed up the day in 2 words. Effing cycling. After all the work Bora did for him today, yes, he was now back in green, but his advantage was only 9 points over the formidable Sam Bennett. Not much of a lead over such a strong challenger, and perhaps another skirmish will commence as soon as tomorrow on the early intermediate sprint before the peloton enters the high Pyrenean passes. This was a legendary stage, but how much more legendary could it have been if Sagan had won? For it is a well-known fact that Peter Sagan is the president of that most elite club I have so respectfully reverenced on 2 previous occasions in this race. Every Peter Sagan win brightens our days by a factor of at least 20%, often more. Since his first World Championship win in Richmond in 2015, 100% of cycling fans have been Peter Sagan fans. Most were fans of his before that race, all were fans after. And if he had won today, why, it would have been as beloved as one of those 3 World Championship victories. But at least another member of the Makes Our Day Club finished the job today. Wout van Aert took his second stage of the race. What a tour he is having. And Peter, though you didn't achieve victory today, and the competition for points shall continue to rage on longer than expected this year, for now, for over the 120th time, tomorrow you shall be back in your green jersey. And for that, we salute you, Monsieur Green Jersey. All right, so we got through it. This was the Crosswind stage that Bora, totally grabbed the race by the horns, took it on, but Sagan couldn't finish it off because his chain dropped. He just wasn't on top form yet. Wout van Aert's unreal, but it was still awesome stage. If Sagan had won, oh my gosh, it would have been, it would have been like his Giro win, maybe a little bit better than his Giro win this year. I mean, that was a pretty phenomenal stage too, you know what I mean? But great stage, loved it, so much fun. Crosswind days are low-key probably the best Grand Tour days. Some people said that's a knock, is that you don't know when to expect them. I think that's a positive for them, is that you think you're just settling in for a boring stage, but then it's like, nope, we're coming to play. Crosswinds today, baby. Crosswinds today. Awesome. Anyways, this was also one of the longest previews thus far. I think this was the longest preview I did thus far. The only ones that's going to beat it are the last couple, when very, very, very historic things happened at the tour. And yeah, since it was so long, this is where I enter a new stratosphere of burden. Getting this written and getting this out. Yeah, these are pretty obnoxious after this. Like, because at that time I was proofreading it and I still wouldn't catch all the mistakes. Like, you can probably still find mistakes in the blog itself, which you can find at cyclingodysseys.com. And follow me at Twitter at cyclingodysseys, and send me an email at cyclingodysseys@gmail.com. Send me an email about anything whatsoever. And subscribe to the show. Leave a 5-star review, because I'll read out the 5-star reviews. And if it's really witty, really, really witty, come on, not just 5 stars. It's like, if it's 5 stars and then it's like really witty, then I'll give you a prize too. But yeah, and in addition to that, this episode is probably long enough. And so yeah, we'll end it here. Thanks for listening, everybody. Vive le cyclisme.